What is up, YouTube? This is it. This is the important video. Not really. The race recap from last weekend's 70.3. The Beastman, my first 70.3. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this race. There was a lot left unsaid after the last video. I think the last thing you pretty much saw after the race was me with my head down looking like I was absolutely destroyed, because I was absolutely destroyed. That was a tough day. So we're gonna get into this. We're gonna break down the race. Let's do it. On top of that race recap, I even sat down. Yes, sir. Sat down, wrote down some information from the race so I can provide you with the correct details, and I'm not sitting here stuttering like a fool like I normally do. Before we dive into the details of the race, we're gonna take it back a little bit. See, here? Yeah, there. Take it back a little bit to May 14th. That was my Olympic distance in Folsom, California. I know I didn't put out a video, my bad. That was supposed to be my primer going into this race. I was literally supposed to finish that race, have about a good solid month of training, and then be able to go into this race. This 70.3 was my first 70.3. It was also supposed to be my A race. I really wanted to just go smash it out of the park. Signed up for the Champion Wave, which eliminates you from age group awards in any age group. So you're basically fighting for position just as pros would. So I really wanted to go into that race as my A priority. Race May 14th. May 17th, I had a dentist appointment, a nasty tooth that had to be fixed. I'm gonna save you the details on that, but they dug around pretty deep. It was not a fun experience, let's just put it that way. That same day, I went for a bike ride. Man, that was one of the worst bike rides. The numbing started coming off my face. I started getting a really bad headache. I could really feel it in my sinus cavity. I was not feeling so great, and I was just thinking, okay, no big deal. It's just hardcore dental work. But that headache lasted 3 days, which then also turned into like this respiratory thing, some kind of cold. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was COVID, whether it was sinus infection. I don't know if they just jacked me up at the dentist or what, but it was not good. I was pretty much done. Couldn't do anything. I did maybe like one group ride when I thought I was feeling better, but I started seeing heart rates that I have never seen before. Almost 190. Could not breathe. Respiratory and things like that were not right. My heart rate was through the roof. Normally, like a cold, anything like that, I can bounce back pretty quick. I know how to get myself back healthy and going. Mind you, I hadn't been sick in years either. That took me out for 2 solid weeks. 2 important weeks I needed to go into this big race. Finally got back to training May 30th. My training was not the same. I could not hit the same workouts. My heart rate was just, it was insane, like through the roof. I had no legs, like could not run. 10-minute pace, like I could not run. I had from the 30th to the 10th. That was my training. It was just shy of 2 weeks of training, you know, going into this big race. So 1 week before the 70.3, I decided last minute I was going to go race this Olympic distance. I went and did this race, and it turned out to be in a heat wave. I got annihilated. Swim was probably one of my best swims for an Olympic distance. Did not feel great. Struggling breathing. Shoulders were sore. I mean, 2 weeks of training basically straight into this race with 0 taper. The bike was phenomenal. I had a really good bike on that, and then the run just fell apart. By the time I hit the run, it was 97 degrees. I wasn't even looking at my heart rate, but going back through the data, I had like 180 heart rate. Did that race last minute, and then next week I raced on a Saturday. On a Monday, I continued with the training. I did not take any break from that race, just kind of hoping to gain some fitness going into the 70.3. It wasn't until that Monday, almost Tuesday, did I start seeing my heart rate being back at normal levels. I had no clue how I was going to go and do a 70.3 1 week later. That's how bad it was. Anyways, so now we can finally dive into the 70.3 race recap. Now that we went back and you kind of understood, you know, this was supposed to be my A race, and then all of a sudden got sick and all this, and lost several weeks of training. I went into this 70.3, A, not knowing if I could finish, B, having what felt like 0 fitness. 4 or 5 days before a huge race, I'm just now seeing my heart rate kind of come back to a normal level. And then on top of it, I raced 1 week before my next race, the big one, going into the 70.3 with no idea if I could finish, no idea if make it halfway through. Like, it was all just out the window. This whole race was out the window. I was like, fuck it, let's just see what happens. That was probably boring, having to go back. But I need you to understand, I did not go into my A race feeling like I was ready to go put it all on the line as my A race. So the race was in Bend, Oregon. The week before was 100 degrees. I was racing in 100 degrees. I go out to Bend, Oregon. First day there, 60, 65 degrees, nice and cool. I'm like, this is awesome. Great. Cool weather. I'll be able to do a little bit more, hopefully. It got colder, and it got colder, and it got colder. The day before the race, I was looking at the weather, and the weather for the race was supposed to be somewhere between 45 and 50. That's a cold race in June. Race started at 7 a.m. Fantastic. Low 40s. I don't even think it was 45 degrees. It was low 40. 45 at the most? I wouldn't even say that. That might be pushing it. Supposedly they took water temperature, 55 degrees for the swim. I call bullshit. I think it was colder than that. Call me a pussy, whatever. I know, I don't do good with cold. Swim, cold water. I knew what to expect with the cold water. So the swim was going to be a downriver swim. This swim was actually cut short. 800-meter swim. I got to the swim early because I knew it was going to take some time to warm up, get my feet acclimated, that sort of thing. So I get over to the water, get my feet acclimated, get used to the water, kind of warm up. They pull my group, the champion wave. They counted us out, I think it was 11 or 12. 2 of which were women. Technically, I was competing against 10 to 9 males. Gun goes off, and normally the races that I've been racing, I kind of put myself in a safe position for the swim, enough where I can get in there, maybe draft some feet, because I know I'm not the best swimmer. I went way too hard. I put myself right in the middle of the start of the pack, so when the gun went off, A, swimming way past what I can normally do, B, I wasn't used to being in the brawling zone, let's be honest. Because fists were flying, I got kicked in the ribs, I got kicked in the face. I'm pretty sure I decked a couple people. We were going. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pull back because I'm not gonna make this downriver swim to hold this pace in cold water. It just went sideways. Couldn't get my breathing down. I started kind of panic attacking. I noticed the guy behind me. Ended up calling for the lifeguard or whatever. I don't know if that guy kept going or not. It looked like he ended up dropping out. I couldn't find deep water on the swim. When I backed off out of the group to calm down and try to get my breathing back, every stroke that I had, every stroke I was hitting bottom. So at one point I just stood up in the water, got my breathing back. I kind of rolled on my back, floated for a second, got my breathing under control, flopped back over. And the funny thing is, I think if I wouldn't have went out so hard and just took it easy, I probably would have came out with the front of the group. Learning experience, right? And then from there, my swim was great. Obviously downriver, so you're moving a lot faster. By the time I had gotten to the bridge, I guess halfway to the transition area, swam downriver to the transition area, I had almost caught up on one of the guys. If I wouldn't have went out so hard, my swim would have been a lot better. I probably would have finished in the front pack. Swim, not the greatest. Came out of the water, man, my feet were already frozen. I'm already kind of burnt a lot of energy. Get into transition, this was a shit show. What I was not prepared for was we were gonna go and bike Mount Bachelor, about 2,500 feet of climbing on the bike within the first 15 miles. So we're already in 40 degrees something weather, gonna go up in elevation. I knew it was gonna be in somewhere in the 30s when I got to the top of Mount Bachelor. So the plan was to get out of the water in transition, go ahead and put on a thermal jersey, put on vest, gloves, socks, beanie even. Coming out of cold water and then gonna go bike up a mountain, I'm gonna freeze my ass off. So transition was absolutely a nightmare. Like trying to put on the thermal when your body's wet, trying to put on the gloves. The gloves took me forever to get on. T1 ended up being 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Normal transition for me, because I always have a hard time getting the wetsuit off, is about a minute 30, 2 minutes I think. Yeah, that was a long transition. Bike, right? Everybody loves the bike. Get out on the bike, start going out on the course. First left-hand turn you have to make. The people that are supposed to direct you were not paying attention. So I went the wrong way, realized I went the wrong way, turned around, and the guy was like, oh, whatever. My bike was strong. Started moving, started pushing some power. Feet were completely numb. After a couple of roundabouts, got out on the main course, and I could see 4 people ahead of me. I mean, they were just these little carrots. I could see them. They were ahead of me. So I was like, okay, let's not blow ourselves up. We're doing all right. Freezing my butt off. Get to the top of Mount Bachelor, it's misting. There's a headwind. I mean, this is as miserable as it gets, and my mental went into a dark place. Holy crap, I just have to get to this turnaround. But before I can get to the turnaround, I have to do this downhill descent. Downhill descent, little skinny tires on wet roads. And I was thinking, going down to this hill, I'm like, man, if I just slide out on this road and go off of this cliff, how long before, if anybody finds me, you know? The average temperature of the bike was 37 degrees. When I hit the top, hit a low of 28 degrees. Felt like I was in some extreme reality TV. Like, this was gnarly. Like, I went into survival mode, basically. Like, I have to get to this point. I have to hit that turnaround. I have to get to this point. Freezing my ass off. My shins just start hurting. Your legs, your feet are soaking wet because of all the water on the road. Hit the turnaround. There's a long climb back up to Mount Bachelor, freezing my ass off, and then hit the descent. And the descent was awesome. It was cold, but I knew, I was like, okay, hit Mount Bachelor. We're gonna go hit this big hill, get down the hill. Actually was surprised how well I did on the bike. I was a little bit iffy of the bike because 56 miles and half of it is, you know, basically 4,500 feet of climbing. Good downhill to recover on. I average about 30, 40 miles, somewhere around there, average going downhill. Yeah, I was just in a dark place. The bike was super, I biked really good, but my mental and just the weather was so absolutely miserable. Ended up making it back down to the bottom, got into transition. That transition was still slower because I had to take off all those layers. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of the vest, I'm gonna get rid of the beanie, I'm just gonna throw the hat on, throw the shoes on, go for it. Even then, it was not warm. T2 was 1:39. Normally it's about 40 seconds at the most for my T2, so that was a little bit slower. Crazy thing was my feet were still frozen. I get on my running shoes, start running. The way that my feet were still frozen and how it felt, I thought I had my cycling shoes on. I almost stopped and turned around. I looked down to make sure. I was like, I got my running shoes, okay, let's go. The start of the run was solid. I felt so fresh and felt so strong, and it just felt good to get out of that, you know, that bike and everything. Took off running. First mile, really good. Second mile, really good. It was 6 miles uphill to the turnaround. Right at mile 5, 6, it started getting steeper and steeper. I was like, okay, I have one lady pass me up. And at this point, you don't know who you're racing anymore because you had 5Ks, 10Ks, you had half marathoners, you had people from different waves all over the place. So the run became really hard and it just kept dwindling, kept dwindling. It was not warm, it was still cold. I did not have any feeling in my feet till mile 8. My feet were completely frozen from the time I got out of the swim to mile 8. That was an extremely hard run, and I was just trying to will myself to keep going. My hips started hurting. My legs were just so fatigued from the cold weather of the bike. By the time I hit mile 10, I wanted to quit. And I was doing everything to stop myself from walking, to stop myself from quitting. I'm gonna finish this, I'm gonna finish this. And I just kept getting slower and slower and slower. And I thought, I had it in my mind, okay, we run up for 6 miles and then we come back and it's a good downhill. The run ended up being like 800 feet of elevation. And I was like, cool, it'll be fast going down. My body was so fatigued, could not run any faster. I saw it go from like a 7:30 pace to 8-minute pace to like an 8:10 pace, 8:20 pace, and then it just like went to an 8:30 pace, just trying to keep myself to keep going. And yeah, my body was just not having it. Kept pushing myself. Mile 12 or like 11, I think it was mile 11, it turns into this just jagged, steep, downhill trail section. Then you had to run through the trail. And I was so excited because I had lived in Bend before. I knew this trail. When I hit it, I'm like, I'm in the home stretch. I'm actually gonna do this. I'm gonna finish this run. Get up to almost a mile, and then all of a sudden, instead of going straight, they have you kind of veer off to the right, run across this bridge to an out and back, and then come back to the bridge. And when I seen that I had to make a right instead of going towards the finish line, my heart broke. I was almost in tears. It took everything not just to quit right there. The time I started coming back around for the finish, it was a crazy race. Let's just put it that way. I probably didn't break it down very good, but it was a wild race. It was an extremely hard race. So I ended up finishing. I was really excited because if I didn't mess up the swim, I would have had a really fast swim time. I would have came out with the front pack, whatever. I messed that up. Lost time in transition, trying to stay warm. My bike was phenomenal. I was super proud with my bike. It got scary at the top. My mental was not there. When I finished the bike, I felt like I could do it again. Got into the run, I was like, oh, I got this all day. And then fell apart at 10 miles. Finally felt my feet at 8 miles and it just fell apart. And like at mile 10 to mile 13, I honestly didn't think I could finish at all. It was a mental game. This whole race was just literally mental. I've went to some serious dark places that I had to get myself out of and to keep myself pushing. I felt like I was so far behind that I was only racing myself. There was no way in hell that I thought I could get a podium. Let's break down the times. Call it good. If you got questions, let me know. I can answer them. So out of my wave, I came out 4th. 1 away from a podium, quite some minutes behind, 11th overall and 9th male. I mean, I had to let that soak in because I felt like I did terrible. I was broken. I was absolutely wrecked. I could barely walk after the race. I was just so mentally drained and physically drained. I wanted to change my socks. My feet were so fucking wet. I couldn't even comprehend. I thought I just did an absolute shit job, but I was proud of myself. I finished, right? Not how I wanted the race to go. And then looking back at it, like my overall results are pretty damn good. So I went back and looked at like, okay, if I went for age group, I actually would have had first age group. But I mean, to finish 11th overall, almost top 10, I'm really happy with that. I think I did a damn good job. It was not my A race. I think if I had gone in with the fitness that I wanted, I've done pretty decent, you know. The weather was challenging. It was June and I'm racing in 30 degrees. To come out with an 11th overall and 4th in my division, that's pretty sweet. That's something good to build off, especially coming off a serious illness and everything. So that's it. That is my race breakdown. This was probably absolutely terrible. I tried my best. I don't, you know, I really tried to break it down. Thank you for checking in and watching this. If you made it through, good for you. Hit that like button, subscribe please, I would appreciate it. Working on some more content. That's all I got for now. If you got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And I will see you next time.
Woo! Head down!